Hey everybody, I'm Nate Savage and I'm here with Don Ross today, and we're going to talk about 3 tunings to spark your creativity on the guitar. What's the first one you have for us, Don?
This one's kind of wild, actually, Nate. This is one that I think I invented. I've invented a few of them, but this one I wrote this tune back in the '90s that I sort of had this. This often happens. I had this idea in my head and just I couldn't get it in any of the tunings I was using. So I came up with this one, and then I realized what it was. It's a voicing of a chord I really like in standard tuning. So in standard tuning, if you have your bottom string open and you play what looks kind of like a B minor 7th chord above it, but then you raise this note to a G, you get what's called an E minor 11th chord, which is a really huge chord. It's 6 different pitch classes on 6 different strings, which is it's hard to do that in the guitar. And so this is the same voicing as an open chord, but down 2 whole tones. So it's a C minor 11th chord, which is bizarre sounding, but it's a C minor chord, but then it has kind of like a B flat chord thrown on top of it. So I'll go through it. The bottom string is a C, so it's very low. The whole guitar is tuned down a fair bit, except for one string. The A string is down to a G. Then the D string, ironically, goes up to an E flat. I wouldn't suggest that with strings that have been on for any length of time at all. These strings are pretty fresh. So the E flat is, of course, above where the string is supposed to be tuned, so it's danger zone. The G is down to an F. The B is down to a B flat. And then the high string is down to a D. So what you end up with is that the bottom 3 strings are a C minor chord, and the top 3 strings are a B flat major chord. But when you play them together, you get this great big chord extension that's called a C minor 11th. So if you play piano, think of it as C, E flat, G, and then you keep going in thirds, B flat, D, F, and that big chord you're basically reproducing on the guitar. And like I say, it's unusual to be able to get that many different pitches on 6 strings. But the cool thing about it is because it's 2 different triads, there's a minor triad. If you bar across the bottom 3 strings, you get a minor chord anywhere on the neck. It's starting to sound like the Batman movie music. You ever notice that? The Batman background music is always just a bunch of random minor chords. Anyway, enough about that. And then the top 3 strings are a major chord. So anywhere you bar that across, you get a major chord. So I use that a lot as a compositional tool, those elements of it. So really pretty cool. And I've written pieces in C minor, G minor, B flat major, E flat major in this tuning. And my wife, whose name is Brooke Miller, she has a guitar was built for this tuning. She liked this tuning so much. Wow. She actually had Michael Greenfield make her a guitar intoned for this tuning with strings set up gauge-wise for this tuning, and she's written probably half her repertoire in this tuning.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And then people like Antoine Dufour used it for a tune called 30 Minutes in London, and I know he's used it for other tunes too.
Cool. Could you give us an example of just a piece of a tune, what it sounds
Sure.
like this tune?
This it's a more recent tune called Upright and Locked Position. I'll play the first little bit of it.
Well, that sounds super lush to me. That's amazing. What's the second one you have for us?
Well, this one's a little different. It's kind of a contrast to the last one. The C minor 11th tuning is so big and lush and gorgeous. This one is much more kind of wide open sounding. The way the notes are laid out is a D, A, D, but then E, A, E. So what that means is there's lots of octaves. And then just 3 sets of octaves. And then otherwise it's mostly fourths and fifths, you know. That's a second, but yeah. And what it allows it to, what it sort of lends itself to is writing things that are very sort of big landscape kind of sounds. There's just something about this particular tuning. It's just so wide sounding. And it's very ambiguous when you hear it. It's like, is it a D tuning? It could be. Is it an A tuning? Yeah, it could be. You know, so that's the nice thing about it, is that it's not locked into a mode. And so I've written pieces in the key of D and in the key of A in this piece, in this tuning. And so yeah, it's very similar to the way dadgad works. I know a lot of guitar players discover dadgad. The nice thing about dadgad is when you're playing in D major or D minor, it doesn't really matter. You can use all the open strings, you can use all the harmonics. And in dadgad, the major scales are really easy to find. You can find major intervals that work like on 0, 2, and 4 on every string in the key of D. Well, in the key of A, this works the same way. So if we think of that as the root, all I did was play 0, 2, 4 in every string. And it's not in order, but those are all the notes in an A scale.
So this is like the A version of dadgad.
Exactly.
Oh,
it's like the
awesome,
A version of dadgad. So you can play arpeggiated triads. Pretty cool.
I think I found my new tuning to experiment with, because I love dadgad.
It's fun.
Yeah.
A lot of people have borrowed this tuning too.
Cool.
And here's a bit of a tune called Thin Air.
I think that's my favorite tuning you've done all day so far. I think just
Cool.
because I'm a big dadgadder.
Yeah. It's got the same vibe.
Cool. So what's the third one you have for us?
This one's actually an open major chord tuning, quite different from the last two. I still use open major chord tunings and minor chord tunings because sometimes they're exactly the sound you need for a particular piece. So the way this one works, it's an F on the bottom. So it's an open F tuning, by the way. So it's an F on the bottom. So I've actually gone up from actual normal pitch on the bottom string. And then the A stays the same where it normally is. The fourth string goes down from a D to a C. The G goes down to an F. And then here's another one going up, the B going up to a C. And then the high string going up to an F. So it's kind of a high tension tuning.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because in one of the lessons we did, I mentioned that the rule of thumb is to tune down usually when you're tuning to a triad or whatever, because you don't want to break strings. So by the same token, if you're going to do any tweaks in an upward direction, certain strings will take them better than others. So I was careful to avoid tuning my D or my G up in this tuning, whereas the other ones, the two outside E strings went up a semitone, the B string went up a semitone, and those three strings can take it. So it sounds pretty lovely. So it's an interesting voicing because the third is so low in it, which is unusual. But it makes fingering some of the bass notes that you need to change chords in certain arrangements really work well. So many years ago, I heard this tune by David Essig that he did in Dadgad tuning, which sounded great. And then I experimented with playing it in this tuning, and I thought it worked really well, and it gave the piece a different character. So this is a bit of a piece called Berkeley Springs.
Sweet, man. Well, thanks for sharing those with us, Don. And
You bet.
guys, if you're feeling a little bit dry creatively, or if you're just having trouble, maybe making a composition happen in standard tuning, alternate tunings like this can be the creative edge that you need to get you to that next level.